it took a lot away from my stuff in the States, and I wanted to put a little more emphasis on my career in the U.S., and I felt like TNA was a great way to do that. So I sort of stopped going to New Japan. I told them I couldn't come for a little while, and I was going to try and make the thing work with TNA. And so, after a while, Triple X ended up becoming just me and Elix.
Yeah. Well, you were a part of probably one of the hottest times in the tag team division in TNA at the time. It was you, America's Most Wanted, and the Naturals. At the time, did you feel that was something special, or is just the chemistry was unreal at the time?
Although I knew that working with AMW was special, man. We didn't really get a chance to work with the Naturals that often. We did a little bit, but it wasn't until at the beginning it was just myself and Elix and AMW, and then the Naturals came along and they put them in a feud with AMW. But it wasn't like when we went to Orlando for the first time and we started doing the 3-hour pay-per-views, and we got into the angle where the losing team was going to have to split up. Like that's where I felt like the four of us, and by that I mean myself, Elix, and AMW. I felt like we were really rolling on. We were really we had a lot of good ideas. We had a lot of chemistry together, and I felt like we were all working very well together, culminating in that tag match at Turning Point that year.
Well, speaking of that match, I was just thinking, what were you thinking about with Elix Skipper hit that move off the top of the cage in that moment?
Please don't fall. That was pretty much it. I honestly, man, it's funny because when we were talking about that, Elix had always talked about wanting to do that, and one of the reasons that the situation went the way it was, there was nowhere for Chris to sort of base for him the way he was. So that was the reason that I was sort of underneath Chris so I could hold on to the cage and Chris could sort of face off on my shoulder. You know what I mean? If you look at the tape, I'm holding on to the cage and Chris is it looks like he's trying to kick me out, but he's actually posting off of me. And so Chris and I are sitting there and I'm looking to the right of me and I'm seeing Elix sort of struggle to get up. And, we had already wrestled 15, maybe 20 minutes at that point. And, we're sweating. I'm covered in blood. And just finally when he got his feet underneath him and started to go, you could hear the crowd just sort of go insane. And then when he finally hit it, I thought nothing else we did at that point, we could have fallen to the floor if we wanted to. But I mean, the fact that Elix hit that, no one was going to remember anything else after that. So we went out and finished the match, and I feel like that match definitely, it stands at the time. It's one of those things that TNA fans will always remember.
It's almost fitting that happened in December because you came into the new year and you got to go on your own. And my question is, I've been wondering this for years. What exactly was the Fallen Angel character when it started?
Well, honestly, the mentality behind the Fallen Angel, and it sort of came together in pieces. First of all, I always had the name. The idea of the name was really just, when I started my career, I was a good guy. And the first time I called myself the Fallen Angel was when I turned heel for the very first time. And the mentality was I used to be good and now I'm bad. So that was the genesis of the name. The genesis of the actual character came around a couple of years later. Once I started watching Dustin Rhodes doing the Goldust character, that character to me, I thought it was great because it pushed buttons across the board. It didn't matter if you were, rich or poor, if you were from the north or the south, if you were, a white, black, whatever race you were, you had a strong sense of your sexuality, and that character, it pushed your buttons no matter where you were from. And I'd always thought, what would be another subject that would sort of push buttons across the board no matter who you were? And the answer I came up with was religion. And so the idea behind the character was going to be a guy who had a God complex, a guy who thought he was God, or making it a little bit more palatable to the wrestling fan base, someone who thought that he was God's chosen. someone who thought that God was on his side and hated everybody else. And so that was the mentality, like a guy that thought that he was doing right, even when it was obviously wrong. He thought he was doing it because God told him to do it, that sort of thing. And so I was taking, the idea of guys like David Koresh and Kevin Spacey's character from the movie Seven, like that sort of thing. And that was how I wanted to do it. But I never really got the opportunity to go like full bore because, religion is sort of a touchy subject. And I always tried to be controversial without being offensive. But at the same time, you're dealing with a television product and sponsors and all that stuff. And the minute that you started talking about God, like, you could see hands sort of fly up in defense and like, oh, maybe don't do that or maybe don't do this. And so it never really got off the ground 100% the way I wanted to go. But I actually, I had a pretty good run with it. And, to this day, people still know the name Fallen Angel. So.
Yeah, it's true. See, I remember, this is kind of jumping ahead, but I remember when you had your feud with Sting in that one match on the Slammiversary, and you got to finally do the whole spotlight and the almost like sermons in the crowd, and I thought that was so perfect. And then I heard a rumor that Vince Russo just didn't get it, and that's why the whole thing went away. Is that true?
I don't think that was it, because it was originally Vince's idea to do that sort of character, but I just felt like he felt like it wasn't working. And, I always felt like, when they were doing the feud with me and Sting, I always felt like they sort of portrayed me as someone that wasn't very important to Sting. Like, they started doing this angle with me, but at the same time, they were still doing an angle with Sting and Abyss, and they were still doing an angle, it seemed like I was very low on Sting's priorities. And so, when I went to Slammiversary that day and found out that, the first time I wrestled Sting one-on-one, that I was going to lose, and then I was, and then that was going to be the end of the feud, I went to Vince and I thought, well, wait a minute, man. This is like, we haven't even really done anything yet, and we're already ending the feud. And, I had a long discussion with him about why I thought that, it was sort of doing me a disservice. The whole mentality, according to Vince at that time, was that I was going to, like, working with Sting was going to put me in that upper echelon. But, at that point, I hadn't even worked with Sting yet. And, like, the entire time, like, they never really focused on me as a nemesis for Sting. It was always, oh, well, there's Abyss, and he's dealing with the world title, and he's dealing with Jim Mitchell, and he's dealing with Abyss. And, oh, by the way, Christopher Daniels was also involved. And I thought, well, of course I'm not going to get over if you portray me as someone that's, down in the middle of the list of guys that he has to deal with. Of course I'm not going to get over. But, that was a discussion that never, I had the discussion, but nothing ever came of it in terms of beneficial, a beneficial direction for me. So it was just something that happened, man. And, Vince's mentality towards me was the way it was. So
yeah, it was disappointing at the time, definitely. Let me go back. You were saying how the X Division was really the center point of TNA. How did you feel when you first won the X Division Championship?
Oh, it was awesome, man. I have to give credit to Dusty Rhodes. He was the guy that saw something in me and saw the opportunity to put me and AJ in the ring together in a singles capacity for the first time. And so, that period of time after we split it up as Triple X, he gave me the opportunity to work AJ in a singles program. And, and that's where I think a lot of good things happened for me in TNA, being X Division champion, working with AJ, and that sort of directly went into, having one of the longest X Division title runs that TNA ever had, and B, getting to work with Joe once Samoa Joe came into TNA. A lot of that had to do with the fact that I was the champ, and they, because I was champion, it couldn't just be Joe and AJ, which was obviously a marquee match. They had to throw the three of us together, and that ended up being one of the best matches TNA's ever had, was the three of us.
Yeah, you actually just read my mind. I was about to bring up, we started doing on the main show. We do like top 5 lists, and we talked about one day the matches you would show somebody to become a wrestling fan, and that unbreakable match between you, AJ, and Joe is in my list. So matches I will show a wrestling fan to say this is what wrestling is. What I want to know, because I've always wanted to know this, what was the story behind that match, and how did you feel about being in the main event of a pay-per-view after the world title that night?
Well, it was just the way that they decided, man. I think they looked at the potential of Joe and myself and AJ for the first time, and I felt like they knew that whatever we did was going to be hard to follow. And so, this was at the end of, we'd just gotten off of Fox Sports Net, and we were about to go to Spike TV. And so I felt like they probably looked at it and they said, well, it's a gamble to do it like this, but there's no detriment to having us go on last. You know what I mean? I felt like they looked at it like, well, typically speaking, we would put the world heavyweight title on last, but we're in a situation where we can gamble and we're not going to lose a whole lot, so let's try it and see what happens. And it ended up working out in our favor and in the favor of the whole card, I feel. I felt like at that point we were definitely playing to our strongest fan base, which was, the hardcore wrestling fan base, the people that were watching us on the internet at that point, the people that were following us, that wrestling fan base that sought us out. That was who we were playing to at that time. Before Impact became a reality in Spike TV, that's who we were playing for. And so they decided to put us on last, and it ended up being one of the best decisions they ever made, because I feel like that had a lot to do with the way the match was received. At that point, you had 3 homegrown guys, basically, and you had a feud that people wanted to see, and it showed, again, that the X Division could be a focal point for that company, and that championship could be a focal point. They put it on the same level as the world title by making it go on last. And I felt like, we gave the fans exactly what they wanted to see. And when the time came and when the opportunity was given to us, we took the ball and ran with it. And so, I feel like that match made the 3 of us sort of marquee names for that company.
Yeah, I wonder, why do you think TNA never really did that again? I mean, I think that's one of the only times that X Division match headlined a show. Why do you think that never happened again after that?
Well, I think a lot of that had to do with, there were very few guys in the X Division that, for one reason or another, ever really had the, I'm not sure how to say it, but I mean, there was only one AJ Styles, there was only one Samoa Joe. And so, I mean, those guys, it was very rare that guys in the X Division sort of, transcended the actual X Division itself. I guess the only guy, or one of the only guys that actually did it past that would have been Austin Aries. You look at someone like Austin, who came on the scene and sort of took the X Division by storm and sort of became bigger than the X Division at that point. Someone that you could put the X Division title on, or even the World Championship on. And that's, I guess that was just, he got himself over. Joe got himself over. AJ got himself over. And so, it wasn't a stretch to make them the focal point of the company.
Yeah. Well, you and AJ, your feud was epic. From 2005, I remember your Iron Man match was one of my favorite matches at the time. And it went on for years. How did you guys keep your rivalry kind of almost not getting stale? Because for me personally, I don't know how a lot of fans felt. I know I always look forward to you two went together, even 5-6 years later.
Yeah, I like AJ and I, we're definitely close friends. And we have similar mentalities about putting matches together. So I felt like we always knew how to make our matches different and still feature the same sort of stuff that we always did. I mean, that's one of the tricks in being a pro wrestler is giving the fans the things that they want to see, but at the same time getting to those things in different manners. And that was something that AJ and I were always good at, was sort of changing enough of it up so that it was different, but at the same time, you know, it was what you'd come to expect from an AJ Styles match or a Christopher Daniels match. And I think the tough part was